Hello there, I'm Charlie Allison. Welcome to episode 3 of 7 on my Nestor Makhno series. The episode is entitled Makhno, Anarchy, and Amnesty, the year 1917. The year is 1917. Makhno is into year 7 of his life sentence at Burtia prison in Moscow, but he is about to hit a streak of good luck. As we spoke about last episode, Russian prisons are not exactly nice places. Makahno was beaten frequently, racked with disease, thrown into solitary, and forced to work long, difficult hours. However, Makahno did not survive 5 years of very difficult guerrilla warfare / terrorism by being a pushover, and so he took advantage of what he could, which is to say, he invested in himself, as the kids like to say these days, and really studied up on his anarcho-communist principles, theory, and praxis. In the course of doing this, he came across 2 people who will be important to us, and him, for that matter. The first lives inside the pages of the book, but he would get to meet him later, is Peter Kropotkin, or Pyotr Kropotkin, because Russians spell things weird. Peter Kropotkin is one of the more foundational philosophical figures in the study of anarchism. And the book that Nestor Makhno read in prison by him shaped his whole worldview, which is mutual aid. Kropotkin argues in Mutual Aid, as an anthropologist, that the species whose members aid each other rather than do the whole red in tooth and claw thing and compete viciously for resources are on the whole better off and happier than those that are viciously competitive inside their species. And he makes the case for this being so with humans as well. Kropotkin argues, to paraphrase as best I can, that people want to help each other and are largely born good. This is a very Rousseauian assessment of human nature. It is only the oppressive and corrupting power of the state that makes them less good, petty, vindictive, and cruel. Therefore, following that, a way to organize yourself is into autonomous communes or farmsteads that are interdependent but also independent. You do what you can to help your neighbor, not because you're obligated to, but because it is right. And this view of human nature would very much appeal to a Ukrainian peasant boy like Makhno. Remember, Ukrainian peasants, what aren't they ever really allowed to own? What's that? Oh. Land! There you go. But if you owned land and you could help your neighbors and not have to be told what to do by Moscow or a Ukrainian government or some overseer, as Makhno had been told what to do for the majority of his life, this philosophy would have real appeal, not just for him, but for the people of Ukraine in general. It's why there's such a at least it's part of why, there's such a large anarchist presence in the rural communities. The sort of libertarian strain of anarchism, not in the same sort of don't tread on me libertarianism we have here, but more on the libertarianism of I don't think the government should exist, period, and we can look after ourselves, this will be fine style, had appeal and would reach its apex under Makhno. So that's the first person we meet in prison. It was said that Makhno never went anywhere without a copy of Mutual Aid in his coat. Probably not true, given how often Nestor Makhno had to run for his life, but it tells you how much Kropotkin means to him. And Kropotkin is a compelling writer. I do recommend reading his work. Second is Arshinov. Arshinov is another anarchist who is in the same jail as Makhno. Arshinov is one of the many historians who get to be there firsthand while Makhno is in the Black Army and making the free territory. They like to joke that they wrote the history of the Makhnovite movement between battles, sort of en route to another battle. We decided to write down what we saw. And the two of them sort of worked out their philosophies together. They became friends, although they had several spectacular falling outs, as friends tend to do in this era. Nowadays, a falling out might mean I'm blocking you on Twitter. In those days, a falling out did not preclude gun battles. But Makhno's still serving a life sentence. No matter how you go to the brain-nasium to learn as much as you can about your political philosophy, it doesn't help you if you have a life sentence, which is a bit of good luck that we talked about earlier. The Russian government is falling apart. While Makhno's in jail, Russia entered World War I, and remember how we talked about the Russian Empire started like this and is more like this now? Well, we're looking at the final threads here, and the government is looking for any possible way to stabilize as they're getting their rears handed to them by the Austro-Hungarians. Widespread discontent, so the acting Minister of Justice, a guy named Kerensky, who's going to be important throughout all this, has the wizard idea of declaring amnesty for all political prisoners because if there's anything the Okhrana, the secret police, and the Russian aristocrats liked, it was throwing people who had different political ideas from them into prisons. It was like a hobby, really. And Kerensky says, no, go free, little birds, get out of my jails. And while that is an excellent humanitarian gesture and absolutely the right thing to do, it did cause chaos. Makhno's life sentence is commuted. He's free. He's been wearing chains for 7 years. A little bit of a shock, wouldn't you say? Kerensky goes on to form an interim government after the Tsar's fall. That is, at least makes pretensions towards democracy, which upsets almost everyone, except for the social revolutionaries. Makhno does not really give a shit about Moscow, however. Moscow's his foreign land, who cares? I'm going back to Hulie-Polye. That's where I belong, that's where I was taken from. Thank you, various gods. And he returns to a Hulie-Polye that is profoundly different from the one that he left. It is different in the sense that the police force has been broken up, and the Free Peasants' Union of Hulie-Polye has gotten its sort of second wind. Nestor Makhno immediately sets about making himself useful to the anarcho-communist cause. He has advanced his study and realizes that no revolution is going to help whatsoever if the peasants, who he's trying to help, don't buy into it. So he sets himself up as a sort of proselytizer of anarcho-communist theory and practice. However, there are truly bizarre scenes from the time of Makhno's return. One of them is Nestor Makhno walking down the streets of Hulie-Polye. As you do, I like to imagine him going out for his morning coffee. And in the course of his morning walk, he sees, walking down the street, bold as you like, one of the policemen who'd been in charge of harassing and arresting him. And Makhno, to say he had a bit of an adverse reaction would be an understatement. He has what we would now call a full-on fit of PTSD, which should tell you something about how the Tsarist secret police tended to treat people in custody, in case that wasn't clear. And Makhno has a real moment where just looking at the man makes him want to go for the revolver, and what the man says does not help any. The man sees that Makhno sees him, and then puts a bright, false smile on, according to Makhno, and says, "Oh, hi, Nestor Ivanovich! Good to see that you're... Oh, dear." Remember, from this guy's point of view, Makhno's off the board. He should be dead, or at least rightfully in prison with the other anarchists. Oh shit, not only is he free, but the anarchists are doing very well in Hulie. And so the policeman's obviously made the calculation, the only way out is through. And just like, oh, nothing wrong, we all did what we have to do. And Makhno is, I'm imagining the vein in his eye, twitching. Does not shoot him down in the street like you might expect from a sort of Pancho Villa or Zapata style folk hero, because he's not that yet. He walks on, goes to a cafe, and just sort of has a mild freak out. Makhno could get emotionally overwhelmed at times. You'll see this from his records in the war. And he concludes, no, I did the right thing by not shooting this man in the street. First of all, he was one of the least dangerous of the former police officers. There are far more dangerous ones, so we gotta leave him alone for now in the hopes that he brings his friends back to him, and then we can kill them all. I mean, that works. That's sound logic, I guess. Always a good reason not to just up and shoot someone. And so it's a world that's kind of liminal. It exists between states, Hulie in 1917. Nobody knows exactly what's happening, and so it's very, very uncertain. We don't know anything about that, do we now? No uncertainty in our timeline. Makhno, in fact, figures out a way with his very tough peasant mentality of ruthlessly practical. I have very little patience for the theoretical. He despised anarchists or communist intellectuals who would just say the theory and the theoreticals of this are very important, but I won't do anything to actually bring it about. And so he decided to use this as his basic pitch to the farmers and people of Hulie. One of the ways he would do this later on, to bring a sort of common philosophical core, he would write songs about how great it was to be an anarchist, but they tended to go along the very violent theme of how great it is to A, be an anarchist, and B, be killing these bastards who are trying to tell us what to do. Red Army, White Army, whatever. The most famous of these songs is the by now classic Mother Anarchy Loves Her Sons, which we will get into as we proceed. So things are looking up for Nestor Ivanovich, but far away in Moscow, there are storms gathering. That Kerensky government that took power in 1917, the early part of it, falls in September. There's a famous Finnish song called I, Kerensky, which translates to ouch, ouch, Kerensky. And it's talking about how Kerensky can't really hold on to the Russian Empire anymore. They describe the process of the dissolution of empire as Kerensky desperately trying to make a cake. And all the outlying Russian provinces are various ingredients, right? Like Ukraine is the sugar, and Poland is the butter, and Finland is the salt. And Kerensky is viewed as a sort of incompetent chef, desperately trying to grab onto these ingredients. And the last final stanza is, and then a German dog came over and knocked over the table and ate up all the ingredients, showing that the Austro-Hungarian forces have just taken pretty much the outlying provinces, Finland, Poland, parts of Ukraine, from the interim government. So that's happening. And then in October, as Kerensky falls, a particular Van Dyked gentleman shows up and proceeds to make everything worse. The Van Dyked gentleman, of course, here is Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, who represents the Bolsheviks, which are a no-compromise group of what they would call communists. What they actually make is state capitalism, and to prove how much broad support they have from the Russian people as opposed to the anarchists, or the social democrats, or any other dissenting political opinion, they inaugurate their rule with a reign of terror. They form the Cheka, who are the precursors to the NKVD, the KGB, or the SFB, which rules Russia now, and decide to basically terrorize their way into legitimacy through secret police, torture, extortion, and murder in a great purge. This does not stop, by the way, after even the Russian Civil War ends. But it tells you the sort of person that Nestor Ivanovich Makhno is eventually going to have to make deals with.